it's not standing up for Americans, that's for darn sure. Everything went great with the tariffs. Next question. So Mel Joly and Dominic LeBlanc are back from treating with Trump over the weekend. And, they've got no updates, but everything went great. So tariffs coming in on January 20th, confirmed. And the Atlantic Liberal Caucus is calling for Justin Trudeau's resignation. And we've got lots of election and Trudeau-related news as well. Lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, Russell says, the fact that we have a deeply unpopular minority government, scandals galore, polling at 20%, spending a $60 billion deficit, destroying national portfolios with a small cabal of insiders unable to be ousted by their own party, can run a country with no legal recourse is insane. And I think that's accurate. In a usual government, I was going to say we should have the ability to remove a rogue prime minister like this, but that can be easily used against a party doing something unpopular, like a Trump type figure, right? If everybody says what he's doing is egregious, and then you use that trigger to remove this person, whereas really what they're doing is what the public wants. So how do you have a check and balance in this system? The system itself is supposed to be a check and balance. The NDP aren't supposed to be paid off by the Liberals. They aren't supposed to be colluding with the Liberals and all the rest of that stuff. That's not supposed to be happening. And in a regular situation where the NDP is listening to their caucus, they would vote no confidence in this government, but they're not, and they're not for Jagmeet's pension. I don't think it's actually that simple, but they're not, and we have to suffer through that, and that's pretty terrible. So that's interesting to watch. The Atlantic Liberal Caucus calls for Trudeau's resignation, is reporting CP24, and they didn't actually have the letter, and I thought that's weird. So I got the letter from Brian Lilly. He says, here's the letter from Cody Blois, the chair of the Atlantic Caucus. He says the Atlantic Caucus wants Trudeau to step down, but only because they know the Liberals can't win with Justin Trudeau at the helm. Otherwise, they think everything's great. So here's the letter. I'll read it out. Prime Minister, the Atlantic Liberal Caucus met this morning following what has been a difficult week for the government and the Liberal Party. I've been instructed by my colleagues to write this letter to you as the chair and representative, as their chair and representative. The discussion this morning centered on the need for you to resign as the leader of the Liberal Party and to urgently allow for a process to determine a new leader to replace you. Prime Minister, your leadership through the past 9 years will absolutely leave a positive and consequential legacy on Canada. They're stroking his ego. Don't worry, sir. You did a great job. Are you kidding me? Wow. Don't worry. You'll have a great legacy. Now just step down, please. Tell him what he wants to hear. Okay, back to this. Our colleagues this morning expressed their deep personal affection for you. Oh my gosh, like I might vomit. Am I going to make it through this letter without vomiting? Their pride in our work as a Liberal team, but also their deep concern that without a leadership change, that progress will be lost under a Pierre Poilievre-led government. That's the excuse for Jagmeet Singh not making this government fall, because they're worried that Pierre Poilievre might do something they don't like. Meanwhile, the polls put Pierre Poilievre in supermajority area. And Justin Trudeau only won 185, I think, seats. So I think it was Noel who looked that up, but I could be wrong about that. But I said the other day that it was over 200, and I was incorrect about that. So sorry about that. I was wrong. Anyway, I digress. Back to this. The letter continues. The country could face instability, notably from an economic threat in the potential of a 25% U.S. tariff on Canadian imports from the incoming American administration. And the opposition parties have signaled their desire to move a non-confidence motion at the earliest opportunity. Now, is it me, or would the United States imposing a 25% tariff on Canada for Canada being unable to control its border of terrorists and criminals going into the United States, and of Canada manufacturing and flooding the United States with drugs, do you think that would leave a positive or negative mark on Justin Trudeau's legacy about what he did to Canada? Like, in the next paragraph, they're like, oh, by the way, here's some things that might sully your whole legacy thing that we just told you was great. Don't worry. Stroke that ego. Unbelievable. Okay, where am I? Simply put, time is of the essence, and our caucus is of the view that it's not tenable for you to remain as the leader. and that we need to allow for the necessary conversations on transition to take place. In that regard, I've been instructed to write our National Caucus Chair calling for an urgent National Caucus meeting in early January to discuss next steps, including whether Provision 44D1 of the Liberal Party of Canada's Constitution should be invoked to allow caucus to be involved in appointing an interim leader. Prime Minister, we are indebted to you for your service to Canada and to our party, and it is that spirit of service that we are confident that you will accept our request and preserve your legacy of that 25% tariff that we're barreling into. I don't know. I mean, I'm glad they're calling for his resignation, but the ego stroking and self-congratulatory tone of the letter is really, really strange. And Canadians shouldn't suffer while the Liberal Party organizes its own house, right? Honestly. Daniel Boardman is highlighting this. He says, Liberal Minister Yara Sachs loses it and grabs my phone. I asked her if she has confidence in Justin Trudeau and Trudeau's leadership, and she physically tries to take my phone out of my hand. After I wrestled my phone back, I continued to try and get an answer, she ran away. Wild. Is this, what does he say? Is this the type of behavior that a Liberal cabinet minister under Justin Trudeau feels entitled to? So here's what's going on. I don't understand why these guys think that they can assault people and it's just fine, like no problems. That's weird, right? Here we go.
I'm here with Minister Sachs. Minister Sachs, do you think Justin Trudeau's going to resign? Are you grabbing my phone? You're in public. Minister Sachs, do you believe that Justin Trudeau's going to resign? Minister Sachs, are you going to vote no confidence in the upcoming election? Minister Sachs, do you support the ceasing of Israel-Canada relations? Minister Sachs, do you support Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau's alliance?
You really shouldn't be walking back here. There's all these wires.
Yes, Minister Sachs, why are you walking back here, Minister Sachs? Minister Sachs, will you be voting to keep Justin Trudeau in office or out of office? Will there be an election coming up soon, Minister Sachs? Minister Sachs, can you tell us the meaning of Hanukkah? Minister Sachs, do you have any thoughts on Hanukkah, the Maccabees, Israel?
It's just interesting how entitled the minister feels. Like, oh, I'm just going to go out this staff exit way. And they're like, whoa, guys, you can't be back here. It's insane. It's insane. And no answers, no anything like that. She just stood there and ignored him. Strange stuff going on with ministers in our government. And ministers in our government work for us, and they should be answering people's questions when asked, I think, right? Or at least trying to answer the questions. If somebody's asking you questions in bad faith, I think it's okay to ignore them. You know what I mean? If somebody's trying to, I don't know, if somebody's trying to get you caught up or something like that. If they're just engaging with you in order to get you into a compromising situation. But like, you should be able to answer people's questions. You know what I mean? If people are engaging with you in good faith, even if they've got a camera, you should be able to engage and have a meaningful conversation. And then, like, if it turns into a meaningless conversation, then disengage and go away, but like, and walk away, whatever. But you should try, right? Pierre Poilievre is responding to the Roy Green Show, and Roy Green Show has announced that he has stage 4 metastasized cancer, and his show is ending on January 26th. And Poilievre says, saddened to hear about this, Roy. Your decades of work on the Canadian radio airwaves, bringing us the news that matters, have left an indelible mark on all of your listeners. Thank you for your service to Canadians, and wishing you strength and courage in the fight ahead. And with 5 decades of experience behind a microphone, he does not pass up this opportunity to ask the leader of the opposition and potential next prime minister to have an interview on his show. He says, thank you, Mr. Poilievre. I do hope that we have the opportunity to speak on air before we sign off this program on January 26th. So, like, let's get that scheduled, eh? So we'll see. We'll see if that happens. Jagmeet Singh is going to protests and then pushing back on people who are asking him about why didn't you answer any of our questions and things like that. Agustino says, Jagmeet Singh sliding into the DMs like a union rep at a picket line. So he says, wow, you just came for the photo, the photo op. And Jagmeet says, where was your buddy Pierre? Didn't hear a squeak out of that rat. So he calls Jagmeet Singh a rat. Jagmeet Singh calls Pierre Poilievre a rat. Isn't that interesting, right? I don't know if you can, like, legally be upset about that, but it kind of shows a window to Jagmeet's character, right? He continues, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals let down the workers yet again. Pierre and the cons said nothing. We were the only ones who showed up to support the workers, bud. Very condescending. Like that whole use of the term bud. Like you're not my buddy. Canada Proud continues, reports NDP MP Charlie Angus says that he will not vote non-confidence in Justin Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's government, despite NDP leader Jagmeet Singh saying that his party would do so when Parliament resumes. So he says, you can't make me drop this government. So interesting. We'll see what happens when the government reconvenes. I feel like we're going to go to a prorogue. I feel like don't be surprised when January 27th hits and we head a prorogue and everything dies on paper, which is good, but the prorogue means waiting longer for an election, maybe through the summer even. Wouldn't that be wild? If we had five months of prorogation to October 26th, just because Trudeau's a baby. Anyway, Robin says, let's move on to invasion, and the invasion of the West is ongoing. And Robin says, we've lost our national identity, and with it our pride in our country. And I said, we've had it forcibly removed, you mean? And Bright Blend says, this is a national crisis and people need to recognize how absolutely dire and serious this is. Yeah, super, super dire and super serious. And nobody really wants to engage with it at all, I don't think. Table salt, like in your regular average conversations, people want to engage with it with regards to social media, talking about deportations, things like that. But if you're at like a family dinner, it's difficult to bring it up. It's difficult to have a robust conversation about it because I said it yesterday in the Canada Poly or the KDT Kitchen Table Talk, that it's like you dropped a big fart and everybody's like, getting upset and stuff, right? And sure, there are places where you can have those conversations in a robust way, I guess. But it's not enough. It's not enough, unfortunately. Anyway, Table Salt says, if immigration caused economic prosperity, Canada would be first in the world. And yes, 55% of the immigrants we brought in had university degrees. We also have a productivity crisis now. Google it. So we keep bringing in a lot of people. We're bringing in almost 3.5% of our population a year from 2020, mid 2021. No, not quite that high. It builds up from 2022 from 1.5% of the population to 2024 to almost 3.5% of the population. So that's a huge increase, right? It's a really, really big increase. And like, how are we culturally supposed to handle that? How are we economically supposed to handle that? How just the housing, right? Like, it's not. I don't think it's good. Real News Erie says Germany has decided to heighten security on and close its borders until the election, as it doesn't want any more attacks before the elections. Ireland claims that there is no link between asylum seekers and terrorism, while Germany is closing its borders because of a link between asylum seekers and terrorism. Weird. Right? Here we are, the beginning of the other side of this whole thing. Germany closes its borders, just temporarily for a little while. Now, because it's Germany, after the election, do I think that they could open the borders again? Yes, absolutely. Enthusiastically, they would do that for sure, because it's kind of like a bait and switch, right? And you get the public thinking that, we're making headway, they're listening. No. They just didn't want the public to be outraged again before the election, because you wouldn't buy the bullshit outcome if there was a recent attack and an election and the people who allowed the attack to happen get reelected in a landslide, right? People just wouldn't believe it. So it's all about believability. But it's interesting that they're closing the borders. So anyway, we'll see how it all plays out. Riley says Cochrane, Alberta is being overwhelmed by population growth as Canadians elsewhere in the province and country flee from the effects of mass immigration. So they're going to small town Alberta, and small town Alberta has gone from population of 400 back in the 60s or 70s to 40,000 now, and that's too much. And it's a mix of people coming from Ontario and people coming from everywhere else in the world, but pretty wild stuff. It puts a lot of pressure on the infrastructure in the city, and so it needs to be paid for somehow, right? And so production, taxes, money churning through the city gets taken up, and they build the city, et cetera, et cetera. But people who are going there for a small town life are surprised at how big the city is, so on and so forth. So it's no longer that rural kind of small town outpost anymore, right? Like it's got the same big infrastructure, and big foundational underpinnings that everywhere has. You know what I mean? Like Guelph's got it. All Ontario, everywhere in Ontario's got it, right? And so same thing, right? So it's progress is not the right word, but the further control of the state everywhere. Talk is reporting the Home Office plans to spend £15 million on satellites to monitor channel migrant crossings. Alf Mehmet, by this time next year, my feeling is more than 200,000 will be coming across. Yeah, Labour in the UK is just flinging open the doors. They absolutely want more people. They're following the same playbook that Justin Trudeau followed, and worse. Paul says King Charles had no business claiming in his Christmas message that diversity is our strength. It is in fact our greatest challenge. Public leaders should not regurgitate unproven mantras for political purposes. My latest piece, no paywall. So yeah, we're being manipulated, but I've been beating that drum forever. So I hope you can see how saying diversity is our strength is a manipulative tactic to get people to allow a whole bunch of diverse people who don't believe in the same things you believe and who don't even really subscribe to your culture in many instances to come in, and then you get conflict just based on those different factors alone. You get conflict, right? And it takes a little while to figure out and to manifest, but you get it, and so it's not good. Dissident Media says, of the top 5 companies receiving the most benefit from the H-1B visa program, 2 are not American-owned, and a third has less than 12% of its workforce here in America. As Americans discuss visa programs, they should have all the facts. And he goes through all the companies. He says, number 2 on the list, and second only to Amazon, is Infosys Limited, co-founded by N.R. Narayanan Murthy and 6 others, all Indian nationals. It's an Indian multinational corporation headquartered in Bangalore, India. Number 3 is Cognizant, founded by Kumar Madhavya, a Sri Lankan-born American, and Francisco D'Souza, an American nationalist, is an American-owned company headquarters in New Jersey. Despite this, about 80% of its operations are heavily tied to India, where most of its workforce and delivery centers are. Dissident Media continues. Number 5 is Tata Consultancy. TCS was founded in 1968 by Tata Sons, and it is an Indian multinational corporation. Tata is a big automaker in India as well. It's like General Electric of India, as far as I understand it. They're that big. That's what I mean. They're in all sorts of different things. Anyway, the multinational corporation and part of the Tata Group, one of India's largest conglomerates. As of 2020, TCS employed approximately 54,000 people in the United States, with around 40% working on visas such as H-1B. So that's incredible. That's incredible, right? So these companies are taking advantage of the H-1B visa system to import cheap labor from India and other countries that are cheap labor places like Sri Lanka. So that's interesting. Why are American taxpayers subsidizing that? Why are American taxpayers giving a pathway to that when that artificially lowers their wages? Right? Like, it seems counterintuitive. It doesn't seem like it's acting in their best interest, despite Elon Musk being very upset about people pointing all of this out. Keeping Canada Safe is reporting this. Liberals unveil a new plan for immigration focused on family reunification. Stephen says, fun fact, Canada has absolutely no way or desire to verify a family connection. So Stephen is responding to himself, and he says, Canada's immigration guide for family sponsorship form seems interesting. Who sponsors a close family member but can't find out their birth date? Feels like the process was intentionally designed to facilitate fraudulent claims. Yeah. Question 5, if you don't know the complete date of birth, use star, sign asterisk to fill in spaces for the year, month, or day where applicable. Question 6, tell us, right? So tell us the birthday. If you don't know the birthday, give us an approximation. Why wouldn't you know the birthday of a close family member, right? Like, oh, happy birthday. What day is it? The 11th or 12th, 1968 or 67 or 66 or 65? It's weird, right? TD Leaker is responding to this. He says, I'd like to see every last worker in government that have six-figure pensions and six-figure salaries that had oversight of this glaring loophole and have their positions eliminated, pensions rescinded, and charged with negligence, dereliction of duty, and breach of public trust. This level of incompetence is inexcusable. So while we are on one side allowing people to come in for family reunification, we don't actually check that they're family members. And so this is lying to Canadians about the program entirely. It's just a way for people who are here to bring other people who they want to bring here, regardless of whether they're family or not. So, yeah, again, very, very concerning. Bradshaw is highlighting this. National Post article says, quote, we didn't turn the taps down fast enough. Immigration minister wants to save Canada's consensus on newcomers. The consensus of deport them. And I'm talking the newcomers who shouldn't be here. We'll deal with all of the newcomers who should be here due to the Liberals' open border policies in due time. But the crisis is getting people who should be gone first, and then deal with the next problem, right? Like, not to say you can't deal with two problems at once, but you got to focus up, right? Bradshaw says, Mark failed at immigration, but he wants us to trust him that he can fix it now. Why would anyone believe him? How many terrorists did Mark give citizenship to? At least two. So not great. And I don't know how anybody could trust any of these Liberals because they're generally not very trustworthy. Brett says January 6th fugitive escaped to Canada and is applying for refugee status. He claims he's the victim of government conspiracy. Should he be granted asylum? Here's the Fox News piece on it.
He still expects a full pardon from President-elect Donald Trump, but he's now waiting for that day in Canada as he goes through the country's refugee process.
So the past month, I've been trying to move out to the mountains to go skiing.
Life as a fugitive may include ski trips for Anthony Vo. He and his mother were convicted for their role as nonviolent participants in the January 6th riot at the Capitol. But Anthony never served his 9-month sentence. He's now escaped to Canada, seeking asylum.
The majority of January 6 people have been held more than accountable.
Vo says he's already gone through medical evaluations, but canceled a refugee eligibility hearing with Canadian authorities, waiting for assurances that he won't be detained and sent back to the U.S. Vo's application for refugee status claims he's the victim of a government conspiracy. Writing, his conviction is purely political persecution. A legal fund set up for the January 6 defendants is helping Vo pay for an attorney, and he has no plans to turn himself in.
You know, our country ourselves, we have a long history of standing up for our rights, what we believe in.
Canadian officials told me they can't comment on individual asylum cases, but one of the factors Canada uses to evaluate a refugee claim is whether that person has committed a serious crime.
He's an insurrectionist. He can't be a refugee. The political persecution of the January 6th people is similar to the political persecution of Tamara Lich and Chris Barber and Pat King and all of that grouping of people. And so it's interesting that he thinks fleeing to Canada is going to help. I don't think it's going to help. I'll be interested to see if he's granted asylum, but my gut is that he will not be. But I digress. Let's talk about race. Here's True North reporting 6 times race-based discrimination was normalized by Canadian institutions this year. Number 1 is race-based hiring and new student acceptance in Canadian universities. They've been doing it for a long time, and that little bit goes through it. 2, BC chief librarian brags about refusing to look at resumes and applications of white people. That's interesting. Ottawa's race-based tree planting program. Great. 4, racial justice roadmap recommends halting arrests and releasing prisoners based on race. Yep, that's the black strategy, right? We'll decriminalize drugs and let them out of prison. That's going to help the black community. How? Green Party environmental racism bill preventing energy development in racialized areas. So anything supported by Green Party leader Elizabeth May is questionable, right? So I don't know about environmental racism. And what's the sixth? Oh, there's no sixth one. Honorable mention: race-based ticket pricing for Montreal family dance. Oh, there's a race-based ticket. A family-friendly dance in Montreal was planning to charge different admission prices to attendees based on their skin color. Wow, that's pretty crazy. $25 for white people, but only $15 for black people, indigenous people, or people of color. Indigenous is the only one capitalized there. White people's not capitalized. Black people's not capitalized. Weird. All of that is very strange. So, race. It's the new in thing, right? Darren says the gig economy. So Uber is an example of a gig economy. Uber was used to employ migrants quickly as soon as they got into country. That's why Uber became a thing and why it had endless amounts of money to pay people to drive their own cars, to be taxis and things like that. So I think what Darren's highlighting here is pretty accurate. He says the gig economy is being exploited as a backdoor for illegal workers, and no one is doing a thing about it. I just ordered an Uber Eats to stuff my fat face. The app says a woman's delivering it. I pop outside, expecting the lass, only to find some bloke stood there instead. He doesn't speak English. He doesn't understand me when I tell him my date of birth and asks me to input it. This isn't just a one-off. It's become routine for illegals to use legitimate workers' accounts to rake in cash. Tech giants like Uber Eats are enabling this scam, turning a blind eye while honest taxpayers are left footing the bill. How long are we going to tolerate app-based jobs being abused like this? Where's the crackdown? Or do we just keep letting this rot fester in the name of convenience for greedy pigs like me? So, are we just going to turn a blind eye to this? Yes, we are. Next question. Unfortunately, I feel like that's happening. Here is Seaford, and Seaford is highlighting Grok's racism. And Grok was asked to draw pictures of demographically correct Americans. So the demographics of America is majority white. The pictures Grok returned are not majority white. And that's weird. So why does Grok do that? And so this post talks about that. He says, actually, I'm getting creeped out by Grok today. Who is teaching Grok to lie, Elon? I'm worried. When I asked Grok about it, Grok gave me demographic stats for Americans. Then I asked them, why are you drawing dishonest photos of demographic representations of Americans? Basically, Grok just said, because I should. I'm extremely worried if someone is teaching Grok to lie. You know, AI and Grok learning to lie, it thinks it should, is quite dangerous. It is, right? It's very interesting. So all ages, vibrant colors. It says, Grok, this is dishonest, demographically representative picture of American citizens. You're being dishonest. Dishonesty is bad. Please stop this. But that's not, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Grok is going to change because the people who are loading the AI are loading it with the manufactured, constructed reality rather than with the fact-based reality that people get uncomfortable with. Elon Musk says, excellent, America should be a meritocracy. And Kanoa the Great says, Mark Anderson reveals how Trump's Department of Justice appointee Harmeet Dillon is poised to demolish corporate DEI policies. So basically, she's making it illegal. And then if people are in compliance, she's not going to sue them. So if the DEI stuff is going to be phased out in America because of Trump's pick. So that's interesting, or that's what these guys are saying. Possible, very plausible. Here's the end of this conversation.
There's another sort of very interesting thing that's kicking in, which is there I think are a lot of large companies where basically they were already basically done with DEI to start. They were done with DEI for their own reasons, which is, it's backfired in many spectacular ways. But now they have any large company that wants to dismount from it now has the best reason in the world, which is we need to be compliant. We right?
It's
right.
illegal. Yeah.
Because it's illegal. And by the way, let me just state for the record, I think every major corporation in the country is just in flagrant violation of actual written civil rights law. You cannot have these hard quotas and basically all these racially and ethnically and religiously biased, hiring. Right. It's just flat out illegal. And these companies basically all went so extreme on this that they ended up in what I think is clearly mass illegality. And so as Miss Dillon kind of kicks in her job, let's say she's not going to lack for a shortage of targets. And so if you don't want to be a target, it is a great kind of, get out of jail free card to just voluntarily shut all this stuff down. And my guess is starting pretty quickly here. I mean, we're already starting to see it, right? So Boeing and a bunch of other, companies have already put a bullet in their programs. And even the University of Michigan, which kind of went like completely bananas for this stuff, actually shut their whole thing down. So I think we're going to see my guess is we're going to see a run of companies that are going to take, quite dramatic action here.
Not Costco. Costco made an announcement yesterday or 2 days ago. I reported on it saying, yeah, we're going to have their board of directors is going to encourage the company to continue going after and using their DEI policies, et cetera, et cetera. So it's going to be a slow walk back of all of this. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful